Legend says there are creatures yet undiscovered, lurking in our local woodlands. Once upon a darkened night, our hero encountered something most unexpected in a secluded corner of a popular local makeout spot. But that's not the real horror in today's episode. No, we have something much more chilling in store for you. Tales from My Dad's Love Life. Alright, that's it. Y'all are on your own. Topher out!
Welcome back to Jimmy Spins a Yarn. In each episode, I will spin a yarn about something interesting that has happened in my life, along with a few lessons I've learned along the way. On our journey together, we'll laugh, we'll cry, and we'll horribly embarrass most of our surviving loved ones. Some of the names have been changed to protect the guilty. This is Episode 2, Peekaboo. I grew up in the Boy Scouts. One of the great and time-honored traditions of the scouting program is telling stories around the campfire. Tales like Three-Fingered Willie, which is all about, well, a guy named William. Or maybe it was Bill, Billy, or Mac, or Buddy. I wonder if he ever had a day of fun in his whole life. Either way, I'll give you 3 guesses how many fingers he had. The fun part about this particular ghost story is that 3 fingers form a perfect claw, which is useful when you want to terrorize kids right before they turn in for the night. Did y'all know he was last spotted in these very woods? Boy, those tents sure do look flimsy, don't they? Well, good night, kids. Speaking of missing appendages, ever hear the one about the escaped convict who had a hook instead of a hand? We'll never find out this guy's name, but he probably thought old Three-Fingered Willie was a bit of a wuss. If you've never heard this one, here's the basics. A boy and girl park somewhere alone. The girl, who is the brains of the operation, says that somebody is looking at them. The boy, who is dumb as a bag full of rocks, doesn't believe her, and he gets out of the car to look around. He doesn't see anyone, but the girl insists on leaving anyway. Sorry, dude, better luck next time. When they get home, that's when they discover a hook hanging from her door. Now that I'm older and understand the value of a dollar, I think those kids should have given that hook back. I mean, have you priced a good quality hook these days? Those things aren't cheap, you know. And speaking of scary stories about cars, there's the old classic where someone is driving home at night alone, but the car behind them keeps flashing its lights. Annoyed, the driver tries to lose them, but the pursuing car stays right on their bumper. Flash, flash, flash. You get the idea. Long story short, turns out the car was flashing its lights because there was a killer in the back seat of the car in front of them. Every time the villain rose up to attack, the flashing lights scared them back into their hiding spot. Here's a life tip. If you're going to murder someone who is driving the very car you're riding in, do the sensible thing and wait for a red light. For legal reasons, I am obligated to remind you lovely listeners that this podcast is listed under comedy, not true crime. True crime is rarely this entertaining. Anyway, we're not going to tell any of those kind of stories today. Instead, I'm going to relate a few of my own real-life horror adventures that I can actually validate because, for better or worse, I was there. Like the boy in the hook story, I was also pretty, stupid in my youth. Way back in my youth. Aren't we all a little dumb when it comes to love? Actually, don't answer that. Back in the days when I was dating my soon-to-be wife, The times are growing close for us to get married. Her mother was very strict. My fiancé had to be home by 10 o'clock, not 1 minute after, every time we went out somewhere. So we would go to a movie or something, and then we would go, parking. We'd do a little hugging and kissing and carrying on, but most of the time we would talk about how we were going to set up and decorate the apartment that we were going to move into once we were married. Located along the mighty Cumberland River in Tennessee, there's a place called Old Hickory Dam. Just past the dam, there's a dead-end gravel road where people can park and walk down to the river and fish. It is also an ideal place to go if you wanted to be alone with your sweetie after the sun went down. Being a dead end, you could, at least in theory, see someone coming. But on one particular night, something happened that was straight out of one of those old horror stories.
Hey, Charlene, what'd you think about this here secluded parking spot?
I don't know, Bubba. Something ain't feeling right. Like something's watching us.
Oh, come on, sugar. It's just you, me, the stars, and these here romantical Cracker Barrel leavings. They ain't gonna eat themselves.
I'm telling you, something ain't right.
Taste that buttery cornbread. Hey, was that feller standing there a second ago?
See, I told you.
Hey, mister, you want some grits?
Bubba!
I looked out the window and there was a man wearing a red shirt and white pants with his hands on the roof of the car leaning down and peering inside. Oh, did I mention the window was down? I panicked, jumped over the seat like an Olympic pole vaulting champion, climbed behind the wheel, gunned that big old high-performance 6-cylinder motor, threw it in reverse and tried to run the man down. My lawyer would like to remind y'all that any and all mentions of attempted violence are purely for the sake of comedic storytelling. I don't know why he puts quotes around the words comedic and storytelling, but I digress. Despite an automobile trying to eat him, the man didn't panic. He just slowly walked away. Real creepy-like. We were rattled that we could no longer focus on our home decor plans, so we decided to call it an early night. She arrived home far sooner than her mother expected, but did I receive any brownie points for my suffering? Nope, just old disappointing scowl number 73. That look still haunts my dreams. Anyway, all that happened on a Saturday night. On the following Tuesday, we went back to the same place. Stupid idea? Probably. But you know how it is when you're young. So there we were, talking about matching futons, only this time I was positioned behind the steering wheel. I had taken the additional precaution of parking with the broad side of the car facing the road, just in case someone walked up. I was a young man at the time, so naturally most of my thoughts were laser focused on the appropriate thread counts of comforters. So I didn't have much brain power left for such thoughts as, gosh, maybe coming back here wasn't the smartest decision. But come on, y'all, I've always been powerless against a pretty duvet cover. Anyway, you can probably guess what happened next. Yep, she started getting that feeling again. I think somebody's watching us again, she said. I don't see anyone, I said, doing my darndest to get her to return her attention to the more immediate matter of curtain rods. She shot angry scowl number 42 at me, hoping I'd get the message. Anything that disrupted a lively discussion of decorative living room accessories always left me a little cranky. I reluctantly pulled a flashlight out of the glove box and picked the darkest point of that dead-end street, which just so happened to be the woods, and flipped the flash on. Feeling confident, I said, "See?" I immediately followed this with a much louder, "Nyah!" There he was again, same red shirt, same white pants, several nights later, on a Tuesday. You would have thought my little car suddenly turned into an SS Super Sport. I couldn't help but feel a swell of pride at the sound that little car made as it threw gravel projectiles down the road as we attempted to escape. You're probably thinking, well, surely he learned that time, right? Oh, you listeners of Little Faith. You obviously underestimate my dedication to properly matched tile sets. That's right. I actually went back a third time by myself. But this time I was packing. And by packing, I meant I was holding a roofing hatchet. Trust me, that man would have been terrified of me if he turned out to be a roofing shingle. So there I am, driving down the dead-end road. I'm throwing the gas in order to preserve the element of surprise. In a fit of maximum stealthiness, I slammed on the brakes and threw on my high beams. I was basically a ninja, y'all. One with all the quiet subtlety of an ad for the circus playing over at Indianapolis 500. You see, back then I drove a Chevrolet Biscayne, which just so happened to be the same car undercover police used at the time. I guess I assumed Mr. Redshirt would think I was a cop. What was I going to do, arrest him? Threaten to bonk him on the noggin with my roofing hatchet? Planning ahead is for the weak. I like to live on the edge, y'all. Anyway, I climbed out of the car and ran around in front of my blinding headlights, hatchet in hand. Sure enough, just a little ways back in the woods, an area of grass was flattened down where someone had been sleeping. I found the stalker's nest. There's no telling how many furniture discussions this man had listened in on, but it was probably enough to land him a hosting gig on his own home improvement reality show competition, had such things been around back then. I turned around to head back to the car, and that's when I realized two things. I was farther away from the car than I realized. I was completely blinded by those intimidating high beams. I'm not going to say I was scared, but let's just say I never wore those particular breeches ever again. Fortunately for me, but probably not so much for entertainment value, I didn't encounter him that night, nor ever again. But that's because we found a different spot to discuss our furniture arrangement plans. Not too far away from the first one, but hopefully far enough away from Old Red. There was a local park that Hendersonville, the town all of this occurred in, had let grow up. And when it got high enough, they finally just baled it for hay. But at this point in time, it was still taller than my car was. Eventually, someone would come along to bale it, but it wasn't quite time for that yet, so they provided a place where couples could coordinate their wallpaper schemes in private. I pulled into the grass, turned off the lights, and made sure to position myself in case somebody wanted to come by and steal our ideas for painted flower boxes. There wasn't a soul in sight. Once again, we had our windows rolled down, partially to enjoy the night breeze, but also partially to hear in case Bob Villa happened to drop by. Sure enough, before long, I heard something. "You hear something?" I whispered. "Yeah," she said. "What is it?" "Doesn't sound like a deer," I said. "You don't think it's another?" she began. "No, I don't think so." I reached down hesitantly and turned on my headlights. There wasn't a man standing there this time. It was actually something worse. A 1964 Ford Falcon station wagon, its headlights had also been turned off, was heading straight for us in the high grass, only a car and a half away. Apparently another young man and his lady friend had the same idea we did. Now keep in mind, from his point of view, it looked as if an undercover cop had just caught him in the act. His eyeballs popped right out of his skull and he yanked the steering wheel like he was doing donuts on a frozen parking lot. All I could think of was, how was I going to explain this to my mama? Mama, don't panic, but I just had a fender bender. Actually, it was a head-on wreck. I'm okay, Mama. No, it wasn't the other guy's fault. No, straight, I was sitting in a wheat field. No, his headlights were off. My headlights were off too. For those of you who don't speak trombone, that last line was, "I knew I should have adopted." Fortunately, we avoided a wreck that night, but our hopes of installing a ceiling fan in our future bedroom were once again dashed. But there are stories and there are stories. The last time we ever parked, we were sitting on the side of a different dead-end road. Suddenly, a cop pulled up beside the car, scaring us nearly to death. I finally understood how the poor boy in the cornfield must have felt. The cop leaned in the window and said, "Boy, what are you doing in there?" "Nothing," I said, the very picture of innocence. He said, "Well, you get out and let me in there and I'll do something." He and his fellow officers shared a belly laugh as they drove off. Looking back, maybe they weren't even real officers. Maybe they just drove a Chevy Biscayne and pretended to be cops in order to find inspired cutlery options of their own. No thanks, I muttered long after they were gone. My lawyer requested me to remind y'all that this was in the early 70s, and sexual harassment sensitivity training wasn't something anyone talked about back then. I haven't been parking since those days, not that I need to anyway. These days I have my own place. Maybe I'll eventually start my own home decor podcast. But until then, the moral of the story for any young'uns listening to this, don't go parking. It simply isn't worth it. If you're really having a burning desire to check out paint samples in private, rent a motel room instead. But remember, if you don't want any unexpected surprises down the road, always use protection. A quality sealant will protect a wooden deck and patio for years to come. Hey y'all, I want to take a moment to thank everyone for the outpouring of love and support you've shown us since we released our first episode. Your kind words meant so much to all of us who work hard to bring you this labor of love. If you like the show and would like to help us grow, please subscribe, share us on social media, and leave us a review. If you want to mail us $20, that'd be nice too, but I'm just saying. Reviews, especially on platforms like Apple Podcasts, helps the algorithm suggest the show to new listeners. Not to mention, they just make our entire day. Or if you just send us money, seriously, we won't stop you. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. Join us next time and I'll spin y'all a brand new yarn.
Hey y'all, this episode was edited and produced by Topher Graves. Art designed by A.M. Fields. Featuring the voices of Jimmy Graves, Topher Graves, and A.M. Fields. Like what you heard and want to connect with the show? Find us on Facebook at Jimmy Spins a Yarn.